There's lots of games. Games where you jump around, games where you run around, games to wander, games to think, games to fight for yourself, games to make you laugh, games to make you cry, and even games to want to make you pull your hair out. There's a game out there for everyone, as long as you're willing to search for yours. But amidst the sea of infinite variety, something echoes. Music has power, the power to tell stories. Okay, but why music? The word video in video game quite literally implies moving visuals. Quote,
a sequence of images processed electronically into an analog or digital format and displayed on a screen at sufficient rapidity as to create the illusion of motion and continuity.
Why not just show the story? I mean, the whole show don't tell thing is spat out everywhere nowadays when it comes to critiquing visual mediums, as well as arguing about them with people on Twitter. But that's kind of the point. This sounds counterintuitive. Get it? But sound and, by proxy, music are ways of showing things. When I brought up video, implying it didn't have audio in it, you probably thought I was crazy. However, this was very much intentional on my end, because sound has become such a vital part in any form of entertainment with moving pictures, that even the idea of taking it away has become uncomfortable. Except for deaf people, I guess. Wait, would a deaf person even be watching this? And yet, most people don't give it the credit it deserves, consciously at least. Because unlike images that are basically mandatory to even engage with these mediums, audio has always been relegated as an add-on. Emphasis on consciously though, because there is a part of our brains that does very much so give audio lots of credit. The subconscious mind. Hey, watch this funny cat video I found. Now watch this other, nearly identical but less funny cat video. Why is the second one less funny, besides the fact that I said so? 2 words. Emotional impact. The images alone show that Tom, that's the cat's name in case you didn't know, got hurt in comedic fashion, but even though his exaggerated movements help to pass the idea, by themselves they simply can't express his emotions with the same intensity that they can when accompanied by a loud scream. And there's examples of this everywhere. I mean, imagine how not scary a horror movie would be without its eerie sound effects or loud jump scares, or how awkward sitcoms would become without their iconic laughing tracks, even though they don't make them any less unfunny. And we can rewind even further. Opera, musicals, theater, hell, most silent movie screenings had to have accompanying soundtracks, otherwise the audience would get too bored. And even comic books, where it's straight up impossible to have sound, still invoke the idea of it through onomatopoeias. Try saying that 3 times really fast. All for the sake of impact, and it's that extra kick that our subconscious has grown to expect. Take it away and... Contrary to what the average unenlightened non-gamer normie may think, despite being interactive and thus more engaging, Video games actually become even less engaging than other visual media when their audio component is removed. Because more than any other medium, games demand deep, meaningful immersion to keep players engaged in their narratives and gameplay loops, as they seek to insert them in their worlds as active participants, not just third-party spectators. And how do they meet this demand? By putting players in the zone. Or flow state, as smart people call it. The zone is a state where
self-consciousness disappears, perception of time becomes distorted, and concentration becomes so intense that the game completely absorbs us, and is achieved as a dialectic between unconscious states of immersion and conscious moments of engagement.
And if that sounded very intelligent, that's because these guys said it, not me. It's important to point out that even in this straightforward definition, the subconscious is stated as a necessary component to enter this elusive state. And whilst visuals mostly stimulate our awakened minds, it's only their combined efforts with audio that can consistently reach that other half of our brains in a meaningful way. And it's this consistency in achieving extra engagement by amplifying emotional beats that gives music such importance, even more so in interactive stories, and especially nowadays that everyone has the attention span of a pet goldfish. Alright, so noises make happy brain chemicals go boom boom, especially in computer game. But how do you use this in storytelling? Like most staples in video games, a lot of game-specific musical tropes came to be as a byproduct of hardware limitation. Older consoles could only reproduce simpler synthesized music, and cartridges could only hold a very limited amount of it. And since most games had far more hours of playtime, not even including the hours spent dying over and over again on the same levels, than they had music, it became necessary for composers to write tracks that could be played over and over again without getting repetitive, like RPG battle themes. Or Mario's victory jingle. Or, oh god, cut the next second. This event-based approach naturally led certain elements in games to become associated with their respective musical representations, and memorable or recurring concepts began drilling themselves in players' heads through their jingles or songs, cementing themselves as iconic the same way that any earwormy pop music did. Because of this unexpected effect, even when hardware removed the limitations that restricted composers in the first place, they just kept on writing their game's scores with the same principles as before. The emotional connection formed between player and game was a marketing weapon to sell franchises, and this formula of clever repetition in sound design was one of the major catalysts to harness it. But it wasn't the only one. Narratives, as basic as they were back then, were also a fuel to invest fans in game series the same way books and movies did. I mean, everyone has that one memory of reading the paper manuals with all the lore and characters of a game their parents just bought while waiting on the drive back home to actually play it. As simple as Sonic vs. Robotnik or Mario vs. Bowser were, these storylines were a motivator to check out those characters' next adventures. And much like narratives in other media, these ones just kept getting more and more ambitious, with multiple endings, optional content, and so many hours worth of text. Hell, some games these days are straight up just playable movies, and others have gotten movies made out of them, with mixed results to say the least. So, if music good and story good, why not combine? That's what German composer Richard Wagner thought to himself, probably, back in the 18th century when he created the leitmotif, a melody to symbolize a single concept in a story that would evolve along with it, combining character and musical progression in the same package. He used these for his operas, but little did he know, this idea was the jackpot video game composers had been waiting for. Keeping the catchy jingles and making them part of the narrative, it was genius. This moment elevated clever repetition to a whole new level, melodies and instruments chosen to represent certain locations, events, or the presence of a character, with infinite variations of these same compositions to reflect the different emotions in the story, dynamic soundtracks that change in tandem with the game, and even secret messages visible only on the music sheets. From this point onward, nothing was out of the question when it came to video game music. And now we can finally enter the segment of the video where I can stop pretending that I didn't just want to nerd out about video game OSTs I like. You've heard me yapping about the theory, but let's be honest, these things are very hard to visualize without some proper examples. That and the viewer retention is just gonna keep plummeting if I don't increase the dopamine levels. As stereotypical old wise sensei, philosopher and politician Confucius once said,
我进了猪笼了，我看了就记住了，我做了就理解了。
So let's get doing! It would be a crime to talk about video game music without at least mentioning the soundtrack so good that it literally got shown to the Pope. Fly high, Omi Francis. Toby Fox, the mastermind behind this incredible RPG with the unique mechanic of befriending the monsters instead of fighting them, isn't even a programmer. In fact, for all the computer nerds in the audience, this psycho wrote the game's entire dialogue system inside an if-else statement. However, if there's something he's really good at, it's music, and this game's soundtrack shows. Undertale has over 100 unique songs, and yet only 21 distinct leitmotifs, with some exceptions of course. This means that, on average, the same melody gets repeated in at least 4 songs. This would normally be a recipe for disaster. If one song can get repetitive, imagine if every other one was just a slightly tweaked clone of it. But in this game's case, the same melodies get so heavily modified to fit different contexts that they become borderline unrecognizable on your first listen. A great example of this are the themes of one of Undertale's most iconic characters. At first glance, Sans, yeah, like the text font, is lazy, aloof, and can hardly take anything seriously, and the song you hear whenever he's on screen captures this energy perfectly. With a goofy melody accompanied by a trombone near the bottom of the music scale, so unmotivated that it can't bring itself to play any higher notes. The composition does the bare minimum to get its point across, and that's it. But this isn't Sans' only theme, as later on in the game, it gets swapped out for this one. This song keeps the same melody, but in a completely different way. It's introspective, distant, right out of an old film noir. It's the theme of someone with a lot to think about, and not nearly enough time to think. Something that we come to find out about the skeleton. This duality is painted with the exact same musical ideas, only remixed in different ways, and this approach to composition is everywhere in this game. But even though leitmotifs are very common in compositions nowadays, especially in the indie game space, not all games follow that mold when exploring their stories through music. Guilty Gear Strive, the most recent entry in the Guilty Gear series of fighting games, command grabs clever repetition out of the window and in its place brings to the table an array of bombastic lyrical compositions with lots of influence from 80s rock and metal bands as well as musical theater. Each character doesn't just get a theme, they get their own mini musical, cramming their personality, lore, and beliefs all in a 5-minute single. And that's not all, because these themes are all over the place when it comes to genres.
Hear it, the pulses of the living. The ironic rhythm is a grand orchestra. It's never the same tone. Who wants to stop this? There can be hardly stop. Bedtime story, happy ending game, just a snapshot in time. Life is a journey, not a destination. Enjoy the ride without sound downs.
Guilty Gear's repertoire is extremely ambitious, but the results speak for themselves. As the game's composer and director, Daisuke Ishiwatari, put it,
"The idea of the vocal track was actually decided pretty early, challenging something new. That's what I want Guilty Gear to be."
To demonstrate the depth of some of these songs, I decided to pick one to quickly tear apart, and because this is my video, I'm picking my main theme.
You should have come sooner! Stop whining! Let's change everything!
Faust has always been,
Injecting love! I don't like this treatment! Viva me!
eccentric, to say the least, and known as more of a comedic relief character in the franchise, cartoony antics and all. Well, until Strive, that is. Plot twist, the funny character is actually depressed. The happy-go-lucky mask he wore, and still wears, literally in the form of a paper bag, was really just a rejection of some of his past traumas and regrets. In the most recent games, this fun alter ego begins cracking to show the depression this character has been hiding. This internal conflict of a man, deeply troubled with his own identity and actions, that not only refuses help but actively hides his condition, is reflected in a chaotic and dissonant track with many different singers, a manic Faust clinging to happiness, an insane Faust, hangry and lost, and a sad Faust coping with guilt. But as the song reaches its climax, we get a moment of lucidity from our protagonist. He begins to accept himself as a whole instead of pushing his ugly sides away.
Without
Much like the sky is still the same, even when it changes color from blue to red to black throughout the day, Faust can also have these multiple facets, even the less bright ones, and still remain whole.
No, I can't see the colors but you. We've got only one smile, so angry from paranoia. What is it like to you? No one can see the colors but you.
This section almost made me cry the first time I heard it, and it shares the same song with... Guilty Gear's soundtrack is crazy, and I mean that in the best way possible. Some games don't even have a story, at least not a fixed one, and Minecraft is by far the most popular in that category. This is the kind of game that got so popular even your parents know about it, and that's for good reason. Minecraft is literally endless. At its core, it's just a game about gathering resources to build things, but its complete lack of structure has allowed people to basically turn it into a game engine, using it to recreate other games, entire countries to scale, and even to build full-on computers with processing units, memory, and you guessed it, Minecraft installed in them. But if this game has no narrative, then why am I mentioning it? Well, because its soundtrack still tells a story, the story written by the player. If you left a Minecraft world running for 10 years with no one in it, not much would happen. This sandbox game simulates the passage of time, weather, and so many entities with a myriad of interactions between them. And yet, the only one who can shape said sand is you. But this dynamic is way too unpredictable for a linear soundtrack. And the way composers C418 and Lena Raine capture this non-linear narrative through music is nothing short of extraordinary. Songs come and go, with random intervals of silence, upwards of 20 minutes in between. Lonely, melancholic songs, with a single piano leading them, much like the player, alone, leads the course of their narrative. They invoke an almost nostalgic feel, even if nostalgia wasn't there to begin with. And they never overstay their welcome. It's music as ignorable as it is interesting, whose presence at seemingly random moments can have a deep impact on the player's subconscious, making their adventures hard to forget. As C418 puts it,
players will build their first terrible dirt hut, and it's an ugly thing. But it had effort put into it. And if the music just randomly happens to play because of that, it makes them remember that moment. It was an interesting thing music could do that never even occurred to me while composing.
music has power. The power to tell these stories. And not just these, but many more too. I wish I had the time to highlight all the soundtracks I know, and there's certainly many more incredible ones that I'm yet to learn about out there. It's a shame that even to this day, many people still disregard video game music as lesser than its mainstream counterpart. It has, however, grown in complexity and ambition to degrees that often surpass it. with a wave of indescribably talented artists leading this movement. Each of these has more than earned the right for their recognition, and yet most still get lost in the credits of their games. And that's where the study of ludomusicology comes in, which is also what I've been doing throughout this video, by the way. This area of research has some trouble taking off, again, since anything video game related isn't taken seriously, but in recent years it has amassed some much deserved recognition thanks to the countless scholars, players, and even video essayists that saw games, their songs, and their stories as an art rather than a juvenile entertainment product. Most gamers still don't know the specifics nor the theoretical basis behind this area of interest, but whether consciously or not, they've gained an appreciation for it over time, be it for the epic orchestral compositions, the soft emotional pieces, or just a really badass song. Even a casual listener that chooses to add a game's soundtrack to their playlists is a step towards their proper acceptance, and that's why I'm here. I give you the facts, the history, and hopefully some cool song samples, and I hope that could foster some curiosity for video game music in you. Go play some games, go search for some ludomusicology, and go listen to some music. Even if I know I shall never change the masses, never transform anything permanent, all I ask is that all the good things also have their place, their refuge.